First and foremost, condolences. Now 14 years old is way too young to die. 14-year-old Scarlett Vickers, who is from Darlington in County Durham, was tragically pronounced dead at her home on July 5th after suffering from an 11cm blade wound to the chest. The depth of 11 centimeters is really important here. Simon Vickers, who is Scarlett's dad, has now begun his trial at Teeside Crown Court, where he has sensationally denied DM due to the fact that Simon says he had been mucking around with his daughter while the wife Sarah Hall was cooking dinner. According to Simon's conversation with police and paramedics, he intended to lob a spatula at his daughter, Scarlett, as they were tossing objects back and forth. However, Simon made a grave mistake, a mistake that would surely haunt the dad and the mum and the rest of the family forever. He had lobbed a blade instead, and it made contact with devastating and catastrophic results. Now, there is no possible scenario where Simon or the wife Sarah Hall are going to get out of the trial unscathed. Worst case scenario is that Simon is found guilty of DM or manslaughter, and the best possible outcome for Simon alone is that he gets found not guilty. However, still in the north of England, especially County Durham, he will be known as the man that killed his own daughter, whether he likes it or not, or whether he has a reasonable excuse or not. Then you have to think, what kind of strain is that going to have on a relationship? Can Simon and Sarah continue? This was their only child. Only 3 people know exactly what happened at the address on Geneva Road, and 1 person cannot speak because they're no longer here. And as for Sarah Hall, the mum is not expected to give evidence in court. Just before 10 p.m. on July 5th, Sarah Hall had been in the kitchen cutting garlic bread. She had then placed a spatula and a kitchen blade on the counter. Scarlett and 50-year-old Simon was nearby, and Sarah Hall had told police that the dad and daughter often mucked around with each other, and their kind of horseplay was to lob objects at each other, and that involved chucking things, as I said. Sarah then told police that Scarlett had lobbed grapes at Simon. In return, Simon then picked up tongs and other items. The dad and daughter went back and forth, and there was no viciousness or malice. Then Simon reached for the spatula and not realised that the blade was with it. At the next moment, Scarlett is said to have lunged for her dad. Now, this is where things get a bit hazy. When Scarlett Vickers had lunged forward, the blade, according to Simon, had just went in. Simon told police who attended the scene that it wasn't even hard, there was no effort to it at all. Simon was also recorded making a swiping motion to police in order to demonstrate the action. So nobody could understand how on earth an 11cm wound was caused. So deep was the wound that it made contact with the heart. Now, it was reported that in the aftermath, Scarlett had been standing for some time. She was stunned, her eyes were agape, shocked, unable to speak for a brief moment, and then an overwhelming pain had taken over, and Scarlett had just screamed and screamed and screamed and screamed. And then the mom and the dad noticed a river of red pouring all over the kitchen. Scarlett had then laid on the kitchen floor, while Sarah quickly dialed 999, and she explained that she needed ambulance right now. When paramedics and police arrived at the scene, the first thing officers and paramedics noted was that Simon and Sarah both seemed genuinely distraught. The second thing they noticed were that both Sarah and Simon were intoxicated, with Simon showing a delay in his faculties and his eyes were aglaze. They did admit that they had been drinking, because Sarah told police that the family had enjoyed a day out watching the football, and police also noted a bottle of wine open. Paramedics and other emergency trauma care teams worked on Scarlett right there on the kitchen floor for over an hour, and even performed open chest surgery in the kitchen before the 14-year-old had tragically succumbed to her injuries. The fatal wound being an 11cm wound to the left of the heart. It made ribbons out of that organ. Scarlett Vickers was pronounced dead at 11:50 p.m. Now, Simon was quickly placed in handcuffs and he was read his rights. He was also told that he would be charged with DM or manslaughter, and he was led out to a waiting police car. From there, Simon was taken to Darlington police station, so was the wife. When police and Simon arrived at the booking and processing, Simon made a simple statement, saying that we were just playing in the kitchen. I don't know how this could have happened. 1 minute I was cooking and the next minute there's red running. During police interviews, Simon then gave a step-by-step account as to what happened in the kitchen and how it was possible for Scarlett to suffer such a deep wound. In his interview, Simon Vickers was asked if he was responsible for causing Scarlett's death, and Simon replied, I must be. He also told how Scarlett was throwing grapes at him and he was throwing some back. In the police interview, Simon also says that he went to get her and Scarlett had pushed him away, so he grabbed the tongs and then chucked the utensils at her. Simon described picking up the tongs probably with his right hand, twisting and then chucking them almost blindly over his left shoulder or arm. In other words, he had been chucking some kitchen tongs towards Scarlett. Simon then finished off by saying, obviously I know they weren't tongs and I know now that they were the blade, something he did not notice at the time. Police then asked Simon to describe his relationship with his 14-year-old daughter, and in response Simon says that he had a good relationship with Scarlett and that they were always messing around, which was quite normal. However, the prosecution was not buying the account by Simon that it was normal for father and daughter to toss items at each other. The prosecution also alleged that Simon first told paramedics that he had chucked a blade at Scarlett. He then changed his story for a second time, saying that he didn't throw the blade, he actually threw other items. And then thirdly, Simon changed the story again by telling paramedics that Scarlett had lunged towards the blade. This was all before the formal interview at the police station. However, when Simon was questioned about this, he said he did not tell paramedics anything of the sort. Now, the prosecution explained that a forensic scientist called Gemma Escott gave evidence in court after studying the blade and the pattern of the injury. The matter of the blade suggested that a jabbing, poking and prodding motion had been used rather than chucking something. The prosecution went as far to say that Simon was lying to police about what happened. So in effect, Simon did admit that it was himself that launched the blade, the very blade that tragically struck Scarlett. But Simon and his defence team are denying the M and also a charge of manslaughter on the grounds of the 50-year-old at the time had no idea that he had chucked a blade at his own daughter. So the question is, because if we believe Simon and that he did not know that he had chucked a blade at his daughter which caused catastrophic injury to the point of death, does that then absolve him of the crime? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and again, condolences. Again, Scarlett Vickers was only 14 years old. She did not have a chance to live a life. Stay safe.